Hi there, this is John Drew from Elevated Planet, and today I am going to be reading to you the next in the series of our 12 universal laws, and this is the sixth universal law, which is the law of cause and effect, and that tells us that every action has a consequence. So the law of cause and effect is often also referred to as karma. Most of us will be familiar with karma. It is the destiny that we create for ourselves through our actions. What goes around comes around, and what we reap, we sow. Every thought, word, and deed is a cause that creates an effect. If we work, then we get paid. If we exercise, we hopefully become fit. Karma is one of the bedrocks of Buddhist philosophy. Buddhism teaches that our own fate is not arbitrary or imposed by supernatural forces, but rather we create our own destiny. 13th century Japanese priest Nichiren Daishonin was the founder of Nichiren Buddhism. It is still widely practiced throughout the world today. Of karma, Nichiren said, if you want to understand the causes that existed in the past, look at the results as they are manifested in the present. And if you want to understand what results will be manifested, look at the causes that exist in the present. The law of cause and effect is very much in harmony with the law of attraction and the law of correspondence. To all intents and purposes, whatever happens in our life is a reflection of who we are and what we do. The law of attraction tells us what is like unto itself is drawn. Meanwhile, the law of correspondence tells us that outer world is a reflection of our inner world. As above, so below. So we should always be prepared to accept all the good things and the bad things that go on in our life with grace. Why? Because we did it to ourselves. If we examine the outcomes of these three universal laws, if, for example, we were going to be kind to others, the law of attraction matches that high frequency emotional vibration for you, and you will manifest kindness from others in return. And they do say kindness begets kindness. The law of correspondence reflects kindness back to you, and kindness fills your outer world to match your inner world. The law of cause and effect tells us our kind actions have a consequence, and that consequence is kindness received as a karmic response. Of course, it doesn't take much of an effort to substitute kindness for any other thought, word, action, or deed, whether positive or negative. This is why we need to take responsibility for all that happens in our life. These are guideposts to help us to get to where we would prefer to be. And there is another thing. No one gets away with any negative act ever. In the world we live in, we see many injustices played out for us, mainly through the media, though in real life also. However, there are just as many positive, heartwarming acts played out, even if they don't get as much attention as negative acts. So life may seem unfair at times, but in reality, it isn't. If you believe that the law of cause and effect is real, you will appreciate that a karmic debt never goes unpaid. As such, you don't have to concern yourself about vengeance if, say, someone selfishly cuts you up in traffic. In fact, rather than getting angry at their aggressive driving behavior, why not send them thoughts of love? And when karma comes knocking, as indeed it must, you can hope that it isn't too painful for them. And your thoughts are important. So this exemplary response of yours is karmically repaid as you receive a big dollop of love in return. I'm not sure if love comes in dollops, but I'm guessing that it might. Anyway, you can expand this concept across mankind. So when you see those negative events playing out in the world, just remember, karmic debt never goes unpaid. You can just focus on being the best you that you can be. And as you do, just know that your life will be naturally uplifted because it is law, universal law. Now, of course, this is an oversimplification. To go into the real nitty-gritty would require a complete book rather than a short article. But let me explain the bare bones of this complexity. Karmic debt never goes unpaid, but it can and does move across different lifetimes. This is going to take us further down the rabbit hole. So here we go. With very few exceptions, we have been on this planet in a variety of lives across the ages. Every role into which we have incarnated has a purpose, and it is all about learning and growing. However, along the way, we inevitably incur karmic debt. Sometimes that karma is repaid during that specific lifetimes, and sometimes it isn't. So what happens when it isn't? At the end of each life, you undertake your life review while back in the dimension of spirit. You get to see and feel the situations where you did well and the things that you felt you would have liked to have handled better. The impact you had on people plays a big part in the life review. So this next bit will be best explained through a working example. So if we go to an extreme, let us say that I murdered someone in a life that now has ended for me too. I'm back in the domain of spirit. In my life review, I get to witness and feel emotionally what I put my murder victim through. No one stands in judgment of that act other than me. I also get to meet the spirit of the person whose life I ended. After a suitable adjustment period, because reincarnation is not typically immediate, together we plan our next lives. This is where I am given the opportunity to repay the karmic debt I have incurred. This will release the burden of karma for me, allowing me to move forward. So that begs the question, how would that play out once we incarnated into our future lifetime? Well, it could be a variety of ways. An obvious solution is for my previous victim to murder me in return. And that might be the answer. However, there are a multitude of ways karmic debt can be repaid. It isn't as simple as an eye for an eye. Hypnotic regression therapy revealed one such instance. The particular subject of the regression therapy had been particularly cruel to a man to whom she had been engaged. She had carried on seemingly deliberately emotionally torturing this poor man for years. Her friends witnessed the cruelty and could never understand its cause or how or why he put up with it at all. All was explained when the regression therapy took her back to a past life. That life was ended abruptly when she was beheaded by her fiancé-to-be in this lifetime. The karmic debt was being repaid in a way that was very different to the original act that created it. Sometimes a murder victim might play the role of an abusive parent or a cruel sibling in that next incarnation in order to rebalance karma. Either way, it is an agreement between the murderer and the murdered. So, coming back to my personal murder karma rebalancing scenario, the irony is this. Whatever is played out to allow my karma to be repaid, it will appear cruel because we don't have the backstory. In reality, I get murdered, but we are simply playing out our roles to release me from my karmic debt. It also tells us that we should be slow to judge the actions of others. The challenge we face is that the veil of forgetfulness descends upon birth. As such, we forget that we planned our life. And we get programmed and conditioned by our life experiences, and this can throw us out of alignment relative to our pre-birth intentions. Plus, we have free will. So while we will instinctively be drawn to play out the roles that we planned, it might not work out. As a result, if the karmic rebalance doesn't happen, the debt remains to carry over to yet another lifetime. This truly is the wheel of karma. This also begs questions of our justice system. Let us assume that I happily get murdered and my karmic debt is now repaid. Yay! However, let us assume that my new friend who delivered on his promise to repay my karmic debt is now on trial for murder. The counsel for the defense stands up and explains everything to the judge and jury. He sagely advises that a hypnotic regression has revealed that this was done at the request of the murdered man, and that would be me. Furthermore, this was arranged in the pre-birth planning room on the other side of the veil in order to rebalance past life karma. The judge takes one look at the head juror who has the full agreement of the jury. So what is the outcome of this? Scenario 1. Case dismissed, announces the judge, while warmly congratulating the defendant for his selfless diligence in helping rebalance karma. Scenario 2. The defense lawyer is taken forthwith to a secure establishment to help them recover from a delusional episode. Meanwhile, a new sane counsel for the defense is identified for the retrial. Now, you may think differently, but I believe that scenario 2 is more likely to play out than scenario 1. The law of the land takes precedence over the law of cause and effect. Of course, we're just having a bit of fun with this, but it's an interesting thought. If you believe in the law of cause and effect, we have to accept that this must happen, and indeed it does. There are numerous examples in the work of hypnotic regression therapists where jail time was the outcome of a karmic debt being repaid. And I'm not suggesting that it should be any other way, but wouldn't it be interesting if every defendant had the right to hypnotic regression therapy to see if there was a karmic debt repayment to be taken into account? And if that was the case, maybe scenario 1 might become reality at some point in the future. So what is next down this particular rabbit hole? Well, karma is being accelerated. That's what's next down the rabbit hole, kind of instant karma. So as we work our way through the coming Earth changes, karma rebalancing is accelerating. I understand that this is because once we get to the 5th dimensional new Earth, it is likely karma, as we know it, will be unnecessary. By then, we have rid ourselves of the darker emotional frequencies. Therefore, it will be a happier place to be with far fewer needs to rebalance. It was interesting when reading the multitude of books by Dolores Cannon, our quantum healing hypnotic therapist extraordinaire, to see that this point was repeated by the subconscious of a variety of clients during their sessions. And this was particularly evident in her later books. Karma is accelerating now to allow us the opportunity to rebalance and to learn and grow prior to the 3D, 5D Earth split. Of course, this begs the obvious question. So when does the so-called Earth split happen? And I have an unequivocal answer to share with you that you can take to the bank. The answer is, I don't know. However, Sheila Seppi, who is the author of Walk-ins, The Cosmology of the Soul, made some very interesting points around the timing of the new Earth during our interview last year. For the curious, I would urge you to take a look at the interview, which is available on our Elevated Planet YouTube channel. And there you will find some interesting points around this. There are a lot of things to play out on planet Earth in the years to come. There will be a light shone on the darker deeds that have gone on the planet for thousands of years. There will be far fewer hiding places, and I strongly suspect those darker elements won't go down without a fight. They will be very reluctant to give up the power they've wielded over us for so long. And because we have been brought up in a life framework that has normalized the stark power, control, and financial imbalances on our planet, then we can be forgiven for not seeing the problem. I suspect these darker controlling elements will look to crank up the fear and the division energy on the planet. This keeps us small and under their control. This is one very good reason it is worth exploring the work of Dr. Stephen Greer. And if it resonates, join with us in our Nos Populi, which is We the People Collective. And to be clear, this is not about fighting the old. Our focus is on giving the wider population the opportunity to understand the past so they can choose whether to join us in building the new. The time is upon us for consciousness to rebirth on the planet, but a war for consciousness has to play out, as has been foretold for thousands of years. As we will appreciate over time, humanity has been enslaved, limited to around 20% of our potential by this imposed life framework. But as that framework crumbles, we are liberated from those limitations and get to step fearlessly back into our power. So as we know, the law of cause and effect says every action has a consequence, even across lifetimes. The same holds true for those who have misused their power for the benefit of the few at the expense of the many. No one gets away with anything ever. Universal law decrees it and will ensure everything comes back into balance ahead of the Earth changes. So we can just focus on the good stuff and we can create our future. As Nelson Henderson once said, the true meaning of life is to plant trees under whose shade you do not expect to sit. Very wise. So if this appeals to you, send an email to me, John Drew, that's JOHNDREW at elevatedplanet.life, and please join us. But if it all sounds like deluded nonsense, please just enjoy this content as either entertaining fiction or the delusional ravings of a lunatic. That's the choice that is yours. Thank you very much for listening. This is John Drew on behalf of Elevated Planet.